Samprikta, over to you.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Because I think
Namaste and greetings. I, Samprikta Banerjee, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, Prabhav Even Niti Anusandhan Sansthan, Nai Delhi, extend my warmest welcome to you all to IMPRI Web Policy Talk. We are gathered today for a panel discussion on Viksit Bharat, Developed India at the rate 2047 and Union Budget 2024-25. This deliberation is a part of IMPRI fifth annual series of thematic deliberations and analysis of Union Budget 2024-25, which is a series of panel discussions on crucial key policy issues and Union Budget 2024-25 involving more than 100 thematic distinguished experts and research team members. This discussion is organized by the Center for the Study of Finance and Economics, CSFE, IMPRI Impact and Policy Research Institute, New Delhi. As a part of IMPRI Web Policy Talk series, the state of public finance towards accountability. Now let me introduce the esteemed gathering. Our chair for the session is Professor Nilanjan Banik, Professor and Program Director, PA Economics and Finance, Mahindra University, Hyderabad, Visiting Consultant, IMPRI. We welcome you, sir. Today's deliberation comprises of an excellent distinguished panel of experts who will be sharing their expertise, which includes Mr. Shogato Banerjee ji, former economist, Mr. Shogato Bhattacharya ji, former chief economist, Axis Bank, Dr. S.P. Sharma ji, chief economist and deputy secretary general, PhD Chamber of Commerce and Industry, PhD CCI, Ms. Yuvika Singhal ji, economist, Quant Go Research, former economist, Yes Bank and ICICI Bank, Dr. Rajesh Shukla ji, Managing Director and CEO, People Research on India's Consumer Economy Price, ICE 360, Indian Institute of Management, Udaipur, Mr. Shubhamay Bhattacharya ji, Consulting Editor, Business Standard, Professor of Practice, Director, Center for Regulatory Governance, Jindal Global Law School, OP Jindal Global University, Sonipat, Professor Pooja Mishra ji, Professor of Economics, Area Chair Economics in IB, Birla Institute of Management Technology, BIMTech, Noida. We are extremely grateful to have such a distinguished panel of experts joining us today. Proceeding further, I welcome all the participants to this enlightening deliberation and thank you for being interested and putting your time, energy, and efforts into understanding the nuances of the Union Budget while helping us to bring together the practitioners and participants through this course for impactful discussion. Now, without any further ado, let us start the program. It is my honor and privilege to invite Professor Nilanjan Banik to start the program with the chair's opening remarks and proceed with the panel discussion. Over to you, sir.
And special budget session. So what we are going to do today is to learn from our esteemed panelists as how well this budget is, both from the macro perspective as well from the micro perspective. Before I actually ask my esteemed panelists to deliberate on this issue, let me give you some background information. All of you must be knowing that Indian economy is in a sweet spot from the macro perspective because Indian economy is the only large economy in the world which is growing at the first pace. If you look into the GDP growth numbers, India's macroeconomic growth has been in excess of 7% over the last 3 years. And it has been no other economy in the world was able to achieve this. If you also look into the current account deficit, we are again in a very good spot because our current account deficit is less than 5%. Fiscal deficit is also in the tune of 5.1%. Now, in many countries, we have seen that it is becoming increasingly difficult to control inflation. Now, the matter of the fact in the Indian economy remains that because the fiscal deficit is under control, our inflation number is also not going haywire. Although there are some complaints about the consumer price index or the how much the common man is paying for food, beverage, and basic necessities, maybe that is going up. But let me assure you by saying that it's not as bad as in other parts of the world, in particular US and in European economy. There, the inflation numbers are much higher than what we see in the context of India, and we have to congratulate our finance minister to keep our fiscal deficit under control, because of which we see the inflation numbers are also in not beyond the control of what the Reserve Bank of India is expecting. The third is our export, in particular the service export, is growing. Indian economy has become one of the major destinations for most of the foreign multinational companies for online and offshore entities, which also kind of showcase that our labor force, in particular the ones which are passing out from either the central universities or from IITs or IIMs, they are in demand across the world. Uh, Apart from this, what we are also seeing is in terms of the consumption demand, which is a cause of concern for some of the other economy, in particular the China at this point of time, what we are seeing. The consumption demand for the Indian economy is resilient to all the foreign exogenous factors, be it war, be it recession in Europe, or for that matter, what we are seeing the political instability in some parts of Latin American countries and other places. So, and another reason for this has to do with the fact that two-thirds of our demand is actually driven by within the domestic economy. So if we are talking about things like healthcare, if we are talking about things like education, tourism, most of this are driven by economic factors. So basically, at this point of time, all these are good, but there are some pain points. The perception is, although the Indian economy is doing well, but maybe it is so happening at the cost of the increasing income inequality. So, what type of intervention is needed to maybe ameliorate this increase in income inequality that we want to understand from our analysis? We are also going to understand that in addition to the income inequality factor, the other pain point, again, perception-wise remains is maybe not too many jobs are getting created. And even if the jobs are getting created, most of the jobs are not quality employment. Most of them are in the gig economy space. So we are talking about low-paid jobs, in particular, for instance, when we talk about Zomato delivery boys or helper in any restaurants or paramedics in working in any healthcare sectors, their return seems to be quite low. So we are also going to understand that from the industry perspective, what uh, what the finance minister has done to create additional employment. Also, the manufacturing sector has been a laggard in comparison to the services sector, and because of which we also see the government is taking initiative initially through Make in India scheme, and then we have seen that the government is also trying to give productive competitiveness boost to some of the manufacturing sector, like through the what we call the production linked incentive scheme. So we are also going to hear that how the production linked incentive scheme is making any difference in terms of the productivity and competitiveness for our manufacturing sector, and also perhaps in terms of generating more employment. So so these are the broad pictures. I have actually given you both sides of the economy, and we will discuss in minute details So, given the nature of the budget we have had yesterday, which has been presented, we will try to break this budget from A, the macro perspective, B, from the industry perspective, and C, from the micro perspective. So, let's do this because each one of our panelists comes with wealth of information and knowledge. We will start with the initially with the macro perspective, and therefore I initially request Dr. SP to comment on what was the industry expectation. Thereafter, what I'll do is I will request Yuvika to talk about the macro perspective, followed by which Shogati is going to talk about the financial market or the more on the fiscal deficit and the bond side of it, followed by which I ask Professor Puja to talk about the PLFS scheme. And then we have Dr. Rajesh to speak about the Indian middle class or how the distribution of income is shaping up and what the government is doing in order to ameliorate this maybe perception wise increase in income inequality. So, having said that, I will request each one of the panelists to keep their observation for 10 minutes. In that way, we will have some more time to discuss, and we will be able to take a few more questions from the from our other guests. So, without any further ado, let me ask Dr. SP to give his thought about how much the industry, what industry expected from this budget, and how much of that expectation he think finance minister was able to deliver. Over to you.
Thank you, IMPRI, for inviting me, and thank you, Professor Nilanjan Banik, for providing this opportunity to express my viewpoint regarding the budget and to provide my connotations and analysis on the budget provided by Honorable Finance Minister. So, firstly, I would like to mention that economy is at the strong foot, as mentioned by the economic survey that India's economy is at the strong wicket and stable footing. That is a great message provided by the Economic Survey 23-24 that India is continuously becoming resilient. We are growing more than 8% on an average in the post-pandemic years. Like we grew at the rate of 9.7% in 21-22, thereafter 7% in 22-23, and thereafter 8.2% in 23-24. So for the current year also, our expectation is that we will grow at around 8%, though the economic survey is providing conservative figure of 6.7, 6.5 to 7%, but our estimates, our confidence on the industries is mentioning that we will be grow at around 8% in the current year also. So inflation trajectory is also becoming soft with the so many measures undertaken by the Reserve Bank of India and the Ministry of Finance. And other parameters like the IIP numbers, export trajectory, they are also intact with the support of so many policies and reforms undertaken by the government during the last many years. So, message from the economic survey is to tripartite responsibility that the government, the private sector, and the academia should come forward to provide facilitation and support to the growing young population in terms of creating employment opportunities and creating the skill development and strengthen India's journey towards Viksit Bharat by 2047. That is the message given by the economic survey. Clearly that we have to take the support of the stakeholders from the industry, and the government is also providing the great handholding, and the private sector should also come forward with the support of academia to link the universities and industries to move forward and to provide them adequate employment opportunities in the country. So, economic survey provided the six-pronged strategy to grow in the Amrit Kal. The first was private sector investment, expansion of private sector investments. That is the one of the six-pronged strategy. And second was the support to MSMEs, because MSMEs are the next growth driver, and they are significantly boosting the Indian economy and contributing significantly in the GDP also, in the manufacturing or in the exports. And third growth parameter was the agriculture sector in the economic survey that of the six-pronged strategy, because agriculture sector is the backbone of the economy. Agriculture sector is the way of life because we are an agrarian economy. So that's why we have to provide adequate support to the agriculture sector in terms of rising productivity, reducing the wastages, and making it to more and more robust to participate in the global export trajectory. And then the fourth strategy was to facilitate the green transition with a great hand holding with the public and private sector, because in loneliness or in isolation, green transition cannot be achieved. So there must be participation of the stakeholders to move forward. And then the fifth strategy provided was the education, to fill the education and employment gap, so that the growing young population becomes educated to move forward and to become employment oriented in the country. And the sixth strategy was the states capacity building, because states are becoming strong stakeholders of the Indian economy, and their participation should increase with their enhanced capacities, so that they are not restricted to their parameters. They are able to expand more and participate more in the trajectory of Indian economy. So on the backdrop of this six-pronged strategy, now the budget for 24-25 has come with the with the concentration on forecasts. As Honorable Finance Minister started her speech from the forecast, Garib, Yuva, Annadata, and Nari. This was the message, first message by the Honorable Finance Minister, that these are the four pillars of the our economy, and these pillars will facilitate the Indian economy to become Viksit Bharat by 2047, and this will support this thought will support the vision of the Viksit Bharat to move forward. So, at this backdrop, they have set the theme of the budget on four major parameters. The theme of the budget is creating employment opportunities, skilling the growing young population, facilitating the MSMEs, and supporting the middle class. Now, they have supported all these parameters in terms of the creating employment opportunities and connecting the universities with the industries in terms of skilling them by providing the apprenticeship, and MSMEs are facilitated with the removal of compliances, and they have promised that they will remove more compliances from the Companies Act, and middle class is supported by some facilitation in the or some tinkering in the tax rates for the lower middle income groups or the lower incomes. So they have set 9 targets or 9 parameters which will facilitate all these things to achieve in the shorter period. Firstly, they have to increase the resilience of the agriculture, employment and skilling, and human resource development. Then the manufacturing support to manufacturing and services and urban development, and the energy security, infrastructure, innovation, and next generation reforms will be at the top of the agenda of the government in the coming times, as they have now started supporting the agriculture sector, because agriculture sector is becoming more and more robust, and its exports are also increasing from $30 billion to $40 billion, then the $50 billion, and there is a potential to increase this trajectory to the level of $100 billion in the next 3-4 years. And you, as you rightly said, that macroeconomy will set the tone of the budget discussion. So macroeconomy is at a strong foot and strong wicket to move forward, and our macroeconomic fundamentals are very supportive. And as they have started thinking about the middle class also to increase the disposable income, they have given some benefits to the lower income groups, like they have increased the tax limit. There will be no tax at up to the income of 3 lakh. That is the great thing. And long-term capital gains are also rationalized with more and more simplification, as they have reduced the long-term capital gains from 20% to 12.5% with without any indexation. and they have simplified the other segments also, like the short-term capital gains are also they are increased from 15% to 20%. Then there are some reforms for the customs duty reduction from mobile phones. For the phones from 20% to 15%, then gold and silver from 15% to 6%, and platinum from 15.4% to 6.4%. So some reforms are happening in the direct taxation segment, but the major reforms are in the social sector segment, as the tone of the budget is Gyan, Garib, Yuva, Annadata, and Nari Shakti. So now we welcome all these reforms, though we had expected some more reforms for the direct taxes. We were suggesting that peak tax rate should not be imposed on the middle incomes. Like we are imposing the 30% tax at the income of 15 lakh. That should not happen, because this is the 15 lakh or 10 lakh or 15 lakh or 20 lakh income is middle income group. So we have to increase this trajectory at least to the level of 30 lakhs. Peak tax should not be imposed on the income lesser than 30 lakh. This was our suggestion to the government, but thanks to them that they have accepted with a little shift from the higher income groups to the lower income group, like 3 lakh, 4 lakh, or 5 lakh. Some there are reforms up, for the income up to 12 lakh. And the other suggestion was that
Dr. Deshpande, Dr. Deshpande, sorry
Yes,
to interject. In the interest of time, I want you to focus on two areas. You have given a very well-rounded figures stating about the state of the Indian economy. But one of the things which we saw in the budget happening, and maybe you can throw some light on that, is for the first time they are trying to give some benefit for the angel investor, and then because the startups, how much the startups are going to get benefited from that. And the other thing is, of course, the indirect tax. Are are we also going to see some more rationalization of the GST tax structure? Something which is also being demanded by some states. So if you can throw some light on these
yes.
two points and maybe wrap the session, we'll again come back to you with some more questions if we have from the audience. Thanks.
Thank you. So we had suggested some
Yes,
reforms
sir.
for
Go
the
ahead.
GST, like petroleum products should come under the ambit of GST, but they have not discussed the GST in length, and they provided only a shorter, I think, 1 or 2 minutes to discuss the GST. So we look forward that our suggestions will be accepted in the next GST Council meeting, because GST is not that much a significant part of the budget announcements as said by them earlier. And second, the angel test, that is a great breakthrough, I think, for the startup trajectory, and they are very happy. And I think this will enhance the move to the startups, and they will become the as we are the third largest startup economy, and we will become second or first in the coming times. That is our belief on the such kind of developments, that we have to enhance this trajectory to the next level. And there are some more reforms needed in the indirect taxes also, as you said, that some slabs should be merged in the GST segment, because there are a lot of many slabs which are confusing sometimes and are not rational for the indirect taxes. So thank you very much, and these were my suggestions and analysis on about the union budget.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Now let me ask Ms. Yuvika to come and deliberate on some other macro factors. It's going to be a very nice conversation, given the starting point you have made on the Indian economy. Let's say Yuvika carry that forward. Yuvika, over to you, please.
Thank you, and a very warm good afternoon to everybody. So I have a bunch of slides that I have prepared for the session. Let me just put them up on your screens. what I'll do over the course of the next 10 minutes or so that have been allotted to me is to spend some energy on where we stand vis-a-vis our Viksit Bharat goal, or have we embarked on that journey already? Sorry, is my screen visible now in a full screen share mode?
Yes,
Yes.
you can see
And
that.
then after setting an overview of the Viksit Bharat, I will talk a little bit about how the yesterday's budget announcements dovetail into this bigger vision that we have over the course of the next 2.5 decades. So when we talk about Viksit Bharat and the goal of becoming a developed economy by 2047, there are two economic milestones that are, almost spoken about in the same breath. One, that is, we want to see the Indian economy become a $30 trillion economy by 2047 from a $3.5 trillion economy that we are now. And second, India's per capita GDP has to move up considerably to about $17,000 from the current level of $2,600. Now, the biggest question that remains on everybody's minds, are these economic milestones achievable? Now, we did a little exercise back of the envelope calculation. We used IMF forecasts for Indian economy growth between now and FY29, and then extrapolated that trend up till 2047. We made some assumptions on rupee dollar, inflation rate, worked with population projections. And we did see, this extrapolation of Indian growth trajectory over the course of the next 2.5 decades. And we do find that there's a strong possibility that India achieves these economic milestones by 2047. So there is a good chance by the time we hit 2047, India is probably closer to a developed economy status. And this has already been embarked upon. That is the path towards Viksit Bharat. This has been enabled by strong growth that we have seen in the Indian economy for the last 2 to 3 years. And this has propelled Indian economy to become the 5th largest economy. And probably in a span of another 4 to 5 years, we'll climb up the ladder to become the 3rd largest economy in the world. And mind you, this change has happened in a very short period of time, because if you would remember, India was classified as one of the fragile 5 economies not too long ago, just about in 2013. So there has been a very dramatic shift on the macroeconomic front that India has seen. And this has been led by seminal policies that have come in across a gamut of sectors, issues. We have seen the introduction of IBC, GST, differentiated banking licenses in the country, a rule-based monetary policy framework, JAM Trinity, digitization, financial inclusion, creation of RERA for the real estate sector, cut in corporate tax rates, just to name a few. And there are many more such reforms, micro and macro, that have made a difference. But in this list of these reforms, there is probably one measure that remains underappreciated in our minds, and that is what India has achieved on financial inclusion. From being one of the most underbanked countries, India, in a very short span of about 9 to 10 years, has seen a fast pace of financial inclusion through JAM Trinity, opening of bank accounts, fintechs, and so on. And in regular state, it would have probably taken any country almost half a century by traditional means to get to where India has come in a very short span of a decade. And if you look at economic history, we find that there's a very strong correlation between countries' financial inclusion level and the growth in it, and its growth in GDP per capita. What has interestingly happened in India's case, it's that it has leapfrogged the financial inclusion stage by a few decades now. So we have reached an advanced economy level comparable to an advanced economy level as far as our financial inclusion is concerned. And what we believe will happen now is that our GDP per capita will also catch up closely, which will take us to the goal of Viksit Bharat in a sustained manner. And this has come about alongside economy structural strength getting bolstered further. Sector balance sheet is the healthiest that we have seen in almost a decade. There has also been improvement in banks' asset quality. Their balance sheets have helped the economy to improve its revenue prospects, and that in direct tax collections in the last 2 years. In fact, direct tax collections as a percentage of GDP that were announced in the today are at an all-time high of 6% as a percentage of GDP, that is. So there revenues are concerned, which can be used to target expenditure in a much more chiseled fashion. And this has come alongside the display of fiscal consolidation. So while we all remember how our fiscal deficit ballooned after the outbreak of the pandemic, but since then, year after year, there has been a concern around the fiscal deficit as a percentage to GDP. And that effort has galvanized further in the FY25 budget with an additional 70 bips of fiscal consolidation that the government is envisaging. So from last year's fiscal deficit target 6, we are now looking to consolidate the fiscal deficit to 4.9 by the end of this fiscal year. And this fiscal consolidation has not come at the cost of quality of expenditure, because there has been a strong thrust within the government on capex push, which continues to remain in place even in the budget of FY25. And in the past, there was this saying that, when the US economy sneezed, the Indian economy would catch a cold. I think that no longer remains the situation, because we have seen in the last 2 to 3 years, while India was a medium hit country after the COVID outbreak, the bounce back that India has seen has placed India as one of the fastest growing economies in the world. And this has come despite geopolitical concerns, global volatility, and whatnot. So India has come to place itself on a much stronger footing. But having said so, that this growth that India has witnessed, relatively robust growth in the last 2-3 years, has also been very uneven in its distribution. So when you look at from the demand side, consumption has not kept up pace. Growth has largely been driven by investments, and within investments, public investment. And consumption is also seeing a dichotomy, as somewhat like a K-shaped recovery, where the high income classes continue to thrive, which is validated by premiumization of consumption, as seen in strong sales of luxury cars, houses, goods. But it's the middle income which have seen income stagnate, and the lower income group which has probably seen a deterioration in incomes. And mind you, our inflation, though has been correcting, it still continues to remain above the midpoint of the RBI's inflation target band. And a large part of it is driven by food inflation, which bites those in the lowest end of the income spectrum the most. So it is from this perspective that we need to look at the budget that was announced yesterday. And the key message that the budget sends out is that it wants to make growth more inclusive in the run-up to the Viksit Bharat vision that India wants to achieve by 2047. So there were a panoply of measures that the budget did cater to, 9 priorities that the finance minister alluded to at the very start of a budget speech. But let me look at 3 or 4 of these in somewhat greater detail. Farm prosperity is one focus area of the government, and it's a focus area that every government, has to retain because of obvious reasons. But I think where the shift has happened this time around is that the government has begun to talk about farm prosperity amidst climate change. Climate change is a real threat that remains, that we need to grapple with, and it's not going to reverse. In fact, last 1 year, the kind of volatility that we have seen in vegetable prices, onions, tomatoes, potatoes, which are staple to household consumption, is a clear indication of how vagaries of climate have had an impact on our domestic supply chains. So the budget did talk about the climate resilient varieties of seeds, focusing on agri-research, creating large-scale clusters of vegetable productions, which are all steps in the right direction. While there is greater ground to be covered, there's no denying that. But nevertheless, I think climate change is a force that needs to be seen as the other side of the coin when we talk about farm prosperity. The other theme that requires attention when we talk about Viksit Bharat, and it did get that kind of attention in the budget, is enabling manufacturing. We cannot achieve the Viksit Bharat goal without pushing forward India's manufacturing prowess. It comes as a surprise to me that, we have a lot of world-class manufacturing that happens in India, and a lot of products that we produce domestically which are made in India actually do better than imported products in the country. I don't see any reason why we can't replicate the success of some Indian brands globally. And rightly so, the focus of the government has been on furthering the PLI scheme, under which it has already identified certain key sunrise sectors. The scheme's allocation was upped by 75% for all the PLIs put together. So that's a significant increase that we saw in the budget. And the focus has also shifted to providing support to labor-intensive sectors such as toys and leather within PLI. So these are shifts that the budget is making, which will have longer term bearing on the economy. And the third aspect that the budget focused on was jobs. And there was two criteria within that job creation that the government focused. One, they want to create not just jobs, but more formal jobs. And second, it's segmented for a certain set of age groups. So the government is looking at getting more first-time job entrants into the market. And this is in sync with the problem that India faces, that its unemployment rate is depressingly high for some of the age groups. So between 15 to 19 years and 20 to 25 years, the unemployment rate that we see is exceedingly high. Even if I take this labor data with a pinch of salt, and there's a lot of debate about labor data in the country, but even if these numbers were slightly lower, the unemployment rates would still be high by any measure. So there is a decisive focus on getting this cohort of youth within the formal working force of the country. And I think that's a great enabler for the long run economic growth. Perhaps last but not the least, that we always discuss how the government needs to nudge private sector investment, how that will create jobs. But that is only one side of the problem. If there are enough jobs, but not capable individuals to take up those jobs, it's an unfinished agenda. So there is a need for the government to invest in human capital, to enhance people's capabilities by providing them good education, providing them for health, providing for skilling. The social sector schemes such as the focus on housing that we saw in yesterday's budget under the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, providing houses, tap water, power, all these social sector schemes need to be seen from this perspective, that all these schemes put together ultimately enhance the capability of the people in the country. So that is where the social sector spending needs to be seen from. And there was yet again a strong focus on some of the sectors that I touched upon: agri, education, health, urban development, rural development. All of these saw double-digit growth in budget allocations when the budget was announced yesterday. But the march towards Viksit Bharat is not without risks and challenges. And let me quote from the economic survey that was tabled the day before, which is very relevant in this context. The chief economic advisor said, the global backdrop for India's march towards Viksit Bharat in 2047 could not be more different from what it was during the rise of China between 1980 and 2015. At that point in time, globalization was at the cusp of long expansion, which no longer remains the case. As we know, protectionism is on the rise. Geopolitics were largely calm. I can roll my eyes on that word calm. We are in no state of calmness as far as geopolitics is concerned in the last 2 to 3 years. Concerns over climate change and global warming were not so pervasive. That's true. And now we have the advent of artificial intelligence, which is a known unknown, because we do not know how artificial intelligence will shape the future of our country. And it is these forces which will probably emerge as hurdles and barriers hurdles and barriers for India to achieve a high sustainable growth. But it depends on our actions today and how we carve the domestic economy by focusing on the right micro challenges and providing the correct opportunities, that we can create a Viksit Bharat. And I think the budget that was announced yesterday laid down the foundation and the groundwork for the Viksit Bharat that India aspires to become by 2047. So I'll stop here and I'll stop sharing my screen so that I'm back. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank
Back
you,
to you,
Yuvika. You have
Professor
done
Nilanjan.
an excellent job in terms of outlining what are the factors which is actually propelling India towards that Viksit Bharat. We all the time talk about financial inclusion as one of the main important points. But at the same time, you also highlighted some other points in terms of the jam trinity, as well as trying to make us cautious about what could be the bug areas in terms of climate change, in terms of the geopolitical as well as in terms of be able to pick up this that we are seeing as the world. Assurance of teacher, the R&D expenditure on purchase competence of their market share, be it Microsoft, be it the Taiwanese semiconductor industry, or be it, let's say, Alphabet. These few companies, like 4 or 5, market share is in excess of 10 trillion US dollar. When
Okay, I think we've lost Nilanjan, if I'm right? Nilanjan's gone offline.
Yes, yes, it dropped eventually.
Yeah.
Okay, so following the flow, why don't we go to Saugata's? Banik sir, you're back. You can hear us?
yeah, for some reason I was shunted out of this thing. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, so you can keep your video off. Then
yeah. So what we are just okay. Yeah. So what we were discussing is some of the point that Yuvika raised, and one of the things which came clearly is the pain points, as well as the challenging point is something that we are going to talk maybe at the time of final wrap-up session, which is there is apprehension that some of the Indian manufacturing sectors are not doing enough in order to increase their productivity as well as the competitiveness. Like I was mentioning, that if you are looking into the largest 3 or 4 corporates across the world, be it Microsoft, Nvidia, Alphabet, their market share is close to 10 trillion US dollar, when the total size of the Indian economy is close to only 4 trillion US dollar. And all the big corporate sectors that we know about at this point of time, even if I take into account Tata, Builders, Reliance, their market share in total is maybe 1/10 or 1/10 of this 3 or 4 big corporates I just mentioned about. So this is the hard reality, because one of the things that is also being talked about, that maybe and what are the challenges that we need to focus about if we were to go from the middle income trap, because there are many countries which get stuck into the middle income trap. I'm not talking about the low income trap. And what are the policy at both at the government level as well as that need to be undertaken by the economy, from the middle income trap to the high sets of point. Let me now invite Dr. Shobhata Bhattacharya. Is he around, Dr. Bhattacharya?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So, Shobhata, if you can throw some light, because Dr. SP and Yuvika have laid out in terms of the broad macro indicators. Initially, Dr. SP spoke about what are the broad macro numbers. And thereafter, Yuvika, in a very nice fashion, have presented some graph and figures and told us what are the initial inputs, factors, all inputs, which actually have throttled the Indian economy to a higher growth process in terms of financial inclusion, jam trinity, and stuff like that. So now, one of the things that we have seen yesterday's budget when it was presented, it we see a great amount of money being given to, in particular, two states, Bihar and Andhra Pradesh. And that for reason we all know, because they are the important partner in the government, which was formed after the last election. Now, one of the things which is there in the mind of common people is how much of this will kind of uh, ensure a balanced growth process. Because if I look into the per capita income of India, we are still stuck around $2,600 US dollar per capita per annum. And interestingly, some of the or most of the northern states, except for Punjab, Haryana, and Delhi, most of the northern states, the per capita income there are actually less than the all India per capita income of $2,600. Of course, within this group, you also have states like West Bengal, Assam, and as well as Orissa. On the other hand, if I'm looking into the southern states, their per capita income are actually 2 or 3 times than the average annual per capita income of that of India. For instance, Goa has a per capita income which is almost 8 times more than that of the Indian per capita income. And so is true for some of the progressive states, southern states like Tamil Nadu, uh, uh, Karnataka, and as well as Telangana. So some of the critics were arguing that why therefore give special, although I can understand about Bihar, but Andhra Pradesh, these are the only two states which have got most part of the benefit which is coming out from the budget. So the question arises that uh, how much aid, how the government is going to finance this? Is it going to jeopardize its fiscal position? And B, is it going to reflect in a more unbalanced growth, regional growth that we are seeing? So over to you, Shobha. Thank you.
So hi, thanks Nilanjan, thanks IMPRI for this opportunity. I'll keep it very, very brief. So obviously, the contributing factor, the fundamentals, why Bihar and Andhra Pradesh got a little bit more than presumably some of the other states. I don't know the allocations for the other states. So it'll be nice to see what the final Finance Commission outlays are likely to be. On Bihar, I'm told that even with the earlier outlays in Bihar, they haven't been able to spend even that money. So it's again comes down to the basic question of state capacity, state capability. That is one of the key priority areas that the finance minister talked about yesterday, the ability to spend the money. I mean, and remember now that the center has really clamped down on the effectiveness of state level spending. Now everything, particularly all the central sector programs, the central sector schemes and the centrally sponsored schemes go through this account called the single nodal account, which is monitored by the Reserve Bank of India. So I mean, if a state doesn't spend 75% of what it is due to spend on that day, it has to return the money back to the SNA account. So I mean, the things are already very tight with states. So I mean, so let's see how Bihar manages to implement some of the programs. Andhra Pradesh, of course, has a very targeted program and things, and let's see how the other programs come about. So, but this, to my mind, basically comes down to the question of state level capacity, and this is something which is, I think, a couple of points which comes to my mind in the approach, which we initially saw in the economic survey, and now yesterday's budget as well. So one, all the big ticket reforms that we keep on talking about, those are gone. Those are over. I mean, you're not going to get big ticket reforms now. Now the focus has come down into the nuts and bolts of actually implementing some of these reforms, the structural reforms, etc., that we had been looking for. And I think that's exactly the way to go. because I think whatever policies, etc., are made out of New Delhi or the state capitals, unless these are actually drilled down to the last mile Gram Panchayat level or the municipal level, you're not going to get effective implementation. And particularly now that we are competing big time with countries like Vietnam, Thailand, etc. So that is a big problem. Forget about China. So that's a big problem. So that's one basic change in the reform strategy of the government that is now completely evident. So this is one. The second point is again from the eastern side that you mentioned. It's not just Bihar and Andhra Pradesh. One of the key 9 priorities of the budget was rebalancing economic activity and growth. So I mean there is this Purvodaya, I believe, the name of that program. So the focus on the eastern states now. So that's also a political imperative for the current government. So that's also something which is we are going to see how that program comes in. So obviously, as you mentioned, I mean the eastern states are particularly lagging on per capita income growth impulses, etc. So how that focuses in overall for the budget. So I mean. So we are not going to see any large talk now. So whatever limited way we need to focus, we focus on the nuts and bolts, the details of the program. The third thing is this continuing fiscal discipline, 4.9%. So if we presume that in FY26, we probably will be able to meet about 4.2 to 4.3, lower than the 4.5 fiscal deficit target of the center. And the interesting thing about that is the state fiscal, and remember states, I mean, we talk about the center's budget, this, that. Nothing is going to happen without, and the finance minister got that exactly right. This is, I mean, India is states. So the state level deficits are probably now going down to about 2.7, 2.8, probably stabilize around that level, which essentially brings us down to striking distance of what S&P has targeted as the 7% GNP, which is required for the next sovereign credit upgrade rating. So that I think is a very, very important part. I think the full marks to the government that they have actually persisted on this path of fiscal consolidation and discipline. Whatever are the various the distractions that they have had to go through in the last 5 years. So that is something. So overall, 4.3% plus 2.7% meets that 7% target. So with a credit rating upgrade is really big news. I mean, the last credit rating update, I believe, was in 2007. So that's something which is, because that's going down to bring the interest rate structure very, very sharply downward. So that's something that we need to watch out for. So I think, and together with this, I mean, you've seen, and unexpectedly, that I mean, we were thinking that there would be increases in the Manrega, the PM Kisan outlays, etc. That didn't happen. So obviously, I mean, they are trying to get the best bang out of the buck of the limited resources that they have, given the various constraints that they are operating in. So that to my mind are the key 3 takeaways that I taken from the budget, and I'll stop there and well later on whenever there is some issue. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for putting it so succinctly and nicely. So let me now invite Dr. Rajesh Shukla to give
Okay, Nilanjan, thanks. Actually,
his thought about the interesting data on per capita. Or Shukla has got distribution of income is looking like, whether some of the intervention that the government is taking, do you think is going to actually help, in particular, the women and the youth population that we are seeing at this point of time? So over to you, Dr. Shukla.
Thanks, Nilanjan. Unfortunately, I missed some of the initial remarks what you have asked because of the breaking of the voice. But let me understand the initial. You mentioned that the middle class and inequality and also the distribution of growth. Thanks, actually, Nilanjan, and a lot of point related to the budget and impact of budget and the covered by our earlier panelists. Let me take actually the some of the things which is really important in terms of looking at the post-COVID period, how we have done actually in last 3 years, which is objectively measured through the primary data research. And that is the actually guidepost how we have done and how it is going to take forward. As far as the budget is concerned, certainly budget is annual actually the activity. So if we are targeting the Viksit Bharat, so it is a next 25 years, we have to be very, very disciplined and in terms of our goals and the, you can say, activity. Let me take actually the points as we have seen actually, and if you recall last year when we have launched our report like Rise of Middle Class, and one of the important thing we have seen is the what we have assumed in 2021 for the country when we have actually the planning to think about the Viksit Bharat in 2019, then like let me say that our assumptions to forecast the income distribution and even observed income distribution, and one can just say the distribution of the growth is very much in line with what is happening in the country. And let me say that the growth rate, whatever we are observing for last 3-4 years, and this year is 6.7, exactly the same percentage we have assumed, and when we have calculated the distribution. So, and we have started and saying only one very important thing as a like to start with the forecast. Our forecast for the middle class currently in 2020 was approximately 30%, and in 2031 middle class size expected to be the 47%, and by 2047 it will be approximately 230. So this is the forecast we have made, and this is very much in the public domain. And we have forecasted in 2021 the 2030 the Indian economy will be approximately 7.1 trillion, and Indian consumption economy will be approximately $5.2 trillion. So let me say that now we are progressing, and we have noticed that some of the things are happening little bit faster than what we have expected actually, and it is good sign. Whatever the action government is taking, are there, whatever the things are, the things are changing. Let me say that as far as the distribution is concerned, as like Yuta mentioned that the K-shaped curve, let me say that in pre-COVID period, the income inequality was approximately, income inequality, I'm talking about the income inequality, not the expenditure inequality, it was approximately 0.36, which rose to approximately 0.454 during the COVID period, which was the, you can say, last 2038, it was the highest income inequality. And when we observed actually in 23, it is again reduced to the 0.39. So one of the indicator in terms of the distribution. So distribution happened, trickle down effect happened, and so distribution middle has absorbed, but still the bottom of pyramid, bottom 20% is not up to the pre-COVID period. So this is the real story. So trickle down effect is happening, and there are reasons for that, because as actually the mentioned that as geography like states, poorer state are having not having that type of capability to absorb the growth. Same way the bottom of pyramid is lacking the capability and capacity to absorb the growth in terms of their, you can say, skill, or there you can say the employment type of locations. For example, it is mostly 80% in the underdeveloped rural areas. They are mostly labor. They are actually also small and small actually traders in the urban area. So they are having limited capability to absorb the growth. But it nevertheless, it never deny the growth is not required. Growth is required, and growth is required, and it is on the right path to achieve. Second important thing I would like to just also mention, if we are thinking about the Viksit Bharat of the next 25%, this budget might be the indicative, but we have to look at what need to be looked as a process, not as an event actually. So why this much actually focus on the employment after 10 years of the government on the youth and other things? Why not it is actually thinking? Because this is not a problem of today actually, and this is not going to get over next year. So I believe there are certain things require as a process, and in that I would like to just flag 3 or 4 things. First thing is the looking at the structure of economy. We have to think like agriculture dependence or type of agriculture, we can't afford much more now actually. We have to rethink how we can recalibrate our actually the agriculture dependent, particularly the population, those who are like the half of 48%, how we can take actually 10 at least the 10 percentage point from there to and reallocate in the sum of things. So we have to very much look at the structure of the agriculture. In that way, like government has taken some of the step to do that. Second thing is the also important, we have to look India diversity. As our earlier panelists mentioned, like the rich versus the poor state. Rich states are growing faster than even the poor states. So gap between the rich state and poor state is widening actually. So in that case, if whatever the need to be done, because migration is not solution, so we have to locate and find out the new economic geography in the country. Like for example, if you take the second tier city, are the developed rural in India, those who are rural area, those who are around to your second tier cities or metro, they are growing even faster than your second tier cities actually in terms of income, in terms of livelihood. So we have to think the economic hotspot in each state and provide the sufficient infrastructure and other things to by which at least urban you can say load of manpower load can be reduced significantly. Third thing is also important, what is currently actually focused in the actually budget. We need the right type of human resource and better utilization of human resource. And why I'm saying right type of universe, if we are talking about the developed rural in 2047, even if you see today, mismatch between the required manpower and existing human resource, it is huge gap actually. So there should be actually the better coordination between industry and university linkages. Whatever teaching is happening need to be looked at what we are looking for, and whatever we are looking for, there should be also support to the creating that type of. So there is a lot of scope for improvement, particularly in this area where the resources which we are going to generate is skill development and other thing as per the requirement. And the last thing also I would like to just mention is we can't actually drive the policy or make the policy in the void of not the factual data and information from the ground level reality. What currently I am saying, a lot of reforms happening, a lot of actually the schemes are going into the up to the means last mile people. But let me say that there is a lot need to be done to create the right type of information to make right time corrective measures in the correction of the policy initiative. Currently, even the government level, let me say, I am actually the interactive with the some of the things, but the current statistical system or you can say some of the institution need to be rigged into, they should come up with the right type of information in very, very transparent way by which at least people can understand what actually impact is happening certain policies to whatever government is taking and how it is actually translating into the reaching to the our goal for the Viksit Bharat, which is currently actually long stat is missing actually. So there are means data are not talking to each other. Are they lacking? Are they even those who are sitting and those who are responsible to generate this type of data? They should not actually criticize the system. They have to plug into and generate the data and information. They can create, because sitting in the government and criticizing the system is not going to help actually. It is better to actually take the step, because if you are not able to create the information and knowledge and insight, it is beyond the capability of the private bodies to generate actually. So with these actually I would like to just say that, but in this I just want to sum up the challenges. It is very good to achieve, but some of the challenges is still is the very much need to be happen, and the focus beyond even budget. For example, growth distribution. Growth distribution is still a case. If you are achieving 8%, how you can create more inclusive. Second is also important, infrastructure gap. Although you are allocating, as Ms. like mentioned, it is not just allocation for the Bihar or other thing. We are hearing actually some of the very bad actually the you can say test in terms of how it is going to use actually. So giving some.
So basically, what you are arguing is the implementation part and connecting the last mileage. You know, so that is a very important point that you're raising, and maybe we'll come back to you on this more because now we have two other speakers who want to share their ideas. But yeah, you thank you for showcasing information regarding your the middle class income distribution and in what way the university can come out with better maybe syllabus that will be useful, and hopefully that will employ many more youth, which is required by the industry. You know, so we will come back to you after at the end of this debate. So let me now invite Mr. Shubhama Bhattacharya, who is also a professor at Geneva Law School. Mr. Bhattacharya, if you can actually tell us a little bit more about how you rate this budget and what are the good things that you observe in this budget, and going forward, how fast you are going to go to that trajectory of Viksit Bharat. Do we actually, because our neighbor China has already become, going by the per capita income, I think it has already become a developed country, you know, because the per capita income is now, I think, more than $12,000 per capita per annum. So going by what we are seeing in terms of what the government is trying to do, how fast or maybe how slow are we going to achieve that Viksit Bharat that everyone is talking about? Over to you, Mr. Bhattacharya.
Thank you, and that's been a wonderful session. And I hope, first of all, audio check, my voice is coming through loud and clear.
Yes, we are able to hear you.
Okay. I'll apologize for not putting on my video, and but there's a very simple reason for that. Today being just the day after the budget, we hacks usually travel across different ministries, and right now, in fact, as we speak, I'm sitting somewhere, just taking up time. So video connectivity will be a problem. So pardon me for just using the audio link. So
Sure.
Nilanjan, I mean, that's my embarrassment, but can't be helped.
And my pleasure is so no worries. Yeah, please.
Yeah. I would like, I mean, it's been a very interesting panel, but having heard everybody, I quite tend to be more illuminated now by what they've said. And so I'll keep my points very short and brief. First of all, this budget has essentially ended up majorly offending everyone. And there was a reason for that. I'll come to it in a minute. But it has been a rare finance minister who has managed to annoy the stock market, the political get political brickbat, and also get very annoying marks from the very vocal middle class. If everyone is criticizing the budget, bar people who are sort of looking at it from a different perspective, feel that she has obviously must have done something right. I am one of those who feel that she has got it right. But I'm not sure that given the political economy in which this budget is going, whether the budget will be, whether she will be able to hold on to all the measures that she has announced in the budget. If she does, I think that's wonderful. If she has to roll back, then I think there's a problem there, because she has outlined very few measures which are in the budget, unlike the budgets of yore, when there's to be lots of measures. So finance ministers could say, okay, out of 10, I take back 3, but I still have 7 with me. She has outlined very few measures, very well chosen measures. But if any one of those have to be rolled back for any particular combination of reasons, then I think we have more trouble on our hands. Which is why I think today's session that IMPRI has organized, and thanks a lot for having called me here, is I think very significant, because the voices that I hear at this session gives me hope that people are beginning to understand, and people will be beginning to be educated about why the particular measures that have been used in the budget have been necessary. I'll draw your attention to 2 columns that came out in my newspaper, Business Standard, this morning. The column by Viksit Bharat says the budget was fiscally prudent, bold, and savvy. Just next to it, the column by Shekhar Gupta says that this was a budget which basically looked at Mahindra plus a bit of socialism and employment. What it does, so you can see the huge, rarely in recent years have I seen a budget generating or eliciting such hugely divergent points of view. Which is why I made the first initial comment that I'd like to see where the political boulder ends up, whether it stops and lets us decide that yes, this is where we stand, or does it create a storm where a lot of the budget measures have to be recast. So that's my first point, and I think that's something that needs to be seen in the next few days and weeks. Usually, if the storm doesn't sort of flare up in the next few days, then one can be reasonably hopeful that it will sort of come down. So what has been that the experts out here, I heard everyone carefully, Professor Shukla, all of you have stated very clearly what have been the budget highlights, and I agree with, as I said, all of those. What has been that has actually annoyed people, I would like to get into this. The first thing that has happened is the budget, very prudently, doesn't offer any state-specific cards, PV cards to pick up from. Since other than Bihar and Andhra Pradesh, which for obvious reasons was going to get a package, other states have not been given. So I think we have more of a chance to see that what would be the impact of a central government budget, which clearly steers of trying to play favorites among the other states. This is very significant. It has not been done before. It is a very challenging step that finance minister has taken. She has not allowed practically any state to feel that it has been chosen other than this. Essentially, pushing the ball back at the states to say that we are giving you the tax transfers, the devolutions on time, the capital support in time. It is up to you to tell the people of your states what you can deliver through your budgets, through your economic policies. And presuming that this budget will be the harbinger of the same plan in the next 4 years, it'll be something that is really a huge reset of center-state relations. It's not surprising that many of the state chief ministers have decided to boycott tomorrow's NITI Aayog meeting, but this is exactly what was being meant to be said, and that is exactly being said. I expect the finance ministry will come out with handouts saying, well, actually, you're wrong. There are places where we have actually given support for states to do X and to do Y. But I don't think that's going to be something that the people will be really looking for, or rather, so will be something that really will be changing the mood. So that's what the center state is. About the middle class and the quip that this budget actually doesn't give them much. Frankly speaking, there was no particular reason for the budget to have tried that sort of a paper, given the fact that India needs now, and India will have to stay within a hard budget constraint enforced by the fact that we are now part of the global indices, and being very firm on fiscal deficit, on inflation, on current account deficit is very essential now, not just simply a talk fest. There was really no space left for the government, if one did basic calculation, to offer anything more than this. And that is what the finance minister has done. So that was about all. In fact, if she had tried to raid the bank and created more space to give out more handouts, what she would have done is she would have had to compensate it by borrowing from the market, which is obviously going to be catastrophic for the fiscal consolidation phase that India has started. So again, that's something that will need to be understood better by the middle class. And it's a hard lesson, but I think it's a good lesson. And as they see inflation sort of not peaking, the growth rate in the economy stabilizing, I suspect this is an approach that will subside. Again, as I said, she has not picked up any winners. The chances of any consolidation of general anger on particular phase, that why has this been given, why has that not been given, will not find a space. This has been very true. Third part of it. Yeah.
Shubham, if you can wrap it up, because we have one more speaker,
Sure.
and then
the third part of it, which is very short, which is that this budget will be, according to me, find its best commentary from the fact that there is no freebies, and therefore the states will have the chance to do things which they would want to do it themselves. So so this is something that's very important, because all the states have walked the freebie route, whereas this government has not allowed freebies. And I think that is something where I'll stop at this moment. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Again, one of the key thing that you highlighted is the FM. The finance minister was prudent enough to keep the fiscal deficit target in mind, and therefore did not dole out any freebies. So in a way, she had being on the path of fiscal prudence. So let me now invite Dr. Pooja Mishra, Professor Mishra, if you can talk a little bit more about the PLI scheme, because this is one of the things which is being talked about. The PLI scheme is targeted towards industry so far, which are in the capital intensive mode of production, and therefore it was not being able to generate that much employment that 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 otherwise one would have expected. But now, yesterday, I think it is now extended to few other sectors. So if you can briefly talk about the importance of the PLI scheme in terms of boosting our export competitiveness as well as employment. Over to you, Dr. Mishra.
Okay, sure. Thank you so much, Nilanjan. Okay, before I talk about the PLI scheme, I would want to take it further from what Shubhomay Chatterjee was saying. When we're talking of the states, and I completely agree with that, as far as the economic survey is concerned, I'm sure there was a term in it, tripartite compact, which resonated with each of us. And I'm sure everybody would agree that the tripartite agreement is pretty important. And we totally agree that whether it is in the case of, let's say, center, state, and private industry, they need to work together to implement reforms such as land and labor reforms. It could also be in terms of, and here I think Rajesh Shuklaji mentioned, that it could also be the tripartite agreement can also be between the government, private sector, and academia for skill development and job creation. And like some of you mentioned, if we need to be a Viksit Bharat by 2047, we need to move slowly and steadily towards equitable growth. But do we have that much of time? I'm not too sure. We need to move away from a K-shaped growth. And I think, Nilanjan, you mentioned that while we are somewhere in the range of about GDP per capita at $2,700, we are competing against a China, which is already in the range of $13,000, and UK is somewhere in the range of $50,000. Plus, we need to ensure that we avoid the middle income trap. So keeping all of this in mind and the unemployment numbers that we've seen in the periodic labor force survey bulletins, be it for January to March 2024, before that, what we can see is while unemployment rate is declining, be it urban areas or rural areas, as per what the government says, but we are way away from the global numbers, right? So if I were to even quote a number, January bulletin, so January to March PLFS bulletin showed that unemployment in urban areas stood at 6.7%, and this was an improvement as against a global unemployment rate of 5.1%. Also, economic survey, the CA himself said that for the Indian economy, by 2030, we need to generate at least 78.5 lakh jobs annually, and this we're talking of annually. So here is where the employment-linked incentive schemes can make a mark. Yes, did the government do good on that? Yes, it did. And hopefully it could go back and work along the lines of the PLI scheme. Also, the employment-linked incentive scheme will lead to formalization of labor, which I'm sure all of us are aware. And it would address the issue of probably private sector investments, which as of now, the government has said private investment has not taken the baton. So hopefully it will go back and address that. Another point that I want to make is, so while the government has worked towards improving private investment, incentivizing, I would say, incentivizing private investment through the ELI, the Employment Linked Incentive Scheme, along with maintaining government capex at 11.11 crores, we are, yes, on the right direction to be a Viksit Bharat by 2047. But again, I think what Shuklaji mentioned was execution at the ground level is most important. Just to give you some numbers, so when he mentioned, I quickly looked up some numbers. Just to give you some numbers, as per the latest data, Indian government cost overruns in terms of central government projects, they were at a 12-month high in April 2024 of 20.09%. And in terms of cost, they were above costing by 33.2 lakh crore. So while it's good that the budget is going back and putting these numbers in place, but what we need to see is how's the execution at the ground level. Another point that I would want to mention, so while we've talked of employment-linked incentive schemes, I've also mentioned tripartite agreements, so between the industry, between the center, and between academia. What we need to ensure is that while the intent is good, but industry needs to step in and move hand in hand with academia. We all agree that course curriculums are being redesigned, should be redesigned, need to be redesigned. And here is where the on-job training or the apprenticeship programs and or all the internships are going to help. But industry needs to do a little more and get into the implementation part with the academia. And same on the academia front, obviously. So here I would mention another point. I was pretty surprised, but yeah, so the in the budget yesterday, which the finance minister, honorable finance minister, said that 1,000 industrial training institutes are going to be upgraded in hub and spoke arrangements with outcome orientation. Importantly, while they are understanding it, but is it happening at the ground level or not? That's the implementation is where I still would want to push the government to go back and check for that. Other than that, what I would want to mention, yes, is, and I think Shuklaji mentioned that as far as the development is concerned, we need even balanced regional development. Probably he was moving in that direction. So one good part is that the government is recognizing the fact that there is a whole lot of focus that needs to be done on the urban development side. And the Honorable Finance Minister mentioned cities are the growth hubs, creative redevelopment of cities, transit-oriented development plans for 14 large cities. What is needed again is that obviously implementation of this happens, because if we're able to go back and grow cities at the city level, at the Gram Panchayat level, that it's going to lead to balanced regional development. Last but not the least, I think Bhattacharya sir mentioned this also. As far as the middle income is concerned, middle income was probably looking at more money in their hands, and I completely agree. Difficult for the finance minister to do that. It's a good long-term strategy, giving a boost to the employment-linked incentive side. But we need to keep this in mind that it's going to give a boost to consumption in the medium term, not in the short term. And so just one of what is needed is probably an out-of-the-box thinking. And one suggestion which probably has been and is being given for quite some time is, and it's not in the finance minister's ambit, which I agree, it's not in her purview, but can we bring probably petrol and diesel under the GST ambit? Because the moment we bring petrol and diesel under the GST ambit, it's going to give again more money in the hands of people. So those are some of the points that I would want to talk about. I think.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think what finance minister is trying to do is to give more incentive for the people to move to the new tax regime. Because if I understand correctly, yesterday's budget, what has happened is if one were to, there is some little rejig finance minister did.
Yeah, and that she also came back with the number that 17,000 rupees annually would be.
Yeah, 17,500.
But is that adequate to give the boost to the growth engine of consumption? I'm not too sure. I completely agree. Investment-led economy will give us a long-term sustainable, but probably a couple of them for short-term, near-term solution will also boost the economy much faster.
No, I agree with you. The only thing is, again, if you see the total number of taxpayers, 2/3 of them are actually in the middle income group. But again, what we also understand is not many of them, what we call middleman or middle income group, not middleman, middle income group. Most of them are also in the unorganized sector. So how much of them are actually paying tax is also a matter of debate. So having said that, let me try to see whether we have any question, and otherwise I want to wrap up this session by highlighting some of the key points which are being raised. But first, let's see whether we have any question from the audience. Do we have any questions? I don't see any question, but So basically, then let's try to wrap this session up by first of all thanking all of you. But one of the highlight of this session has been that India is certainly growing. In terms of macro numbers, we are not in a bad shape. In fact, we are doing pretty well. Um, the only cause of concern, which seems at this point of time, again at the broad headline number, is maybe the consumer price index number is a little bit on the higher side. But apart from that, although the unemployment numbers seem to be less than the long-term unemployment rate of 8%, but still the matter of concern remains that whether the jobs which are getting created are quality jobs or not. And some of the challenges that we are seeing at this point of time is in terms of exogenous factors like climate change. We are also seeing some of the spillover effect of what is happening elsewhere in the world, be it the geopolitical instability, or for that matter, the volatility in some of the essential input, in particular the crude oil prices. That is going to cause some problem at a macro level. At the micro level, what I hear from all of you is the better implementation of the policy which are already being rolled out, and how effective in terms of the, let's say, trying to ensure that the manufacturing sector still remain competitive and at the same time able to absorb the youth of our country, because youth employment remain a cause of concern. So as I hear from one of you saying that, therefore, the need of the hour is how to ensure that the syllabus that we are teaching at the university level are in line with what the industry needs. And then, of course, in terms of going forward, uh, again, what I hear is, given the political scenario that we are passing through at this point of time, maybe there is not too much space for further bold reforms for the government to undertake. But whatever thing the government is trying to do in terms of the main pillars of what we say, or what the finance minister is speaking, namely the farmers, youth, then the MSME sector. So these pillars need to be strengthened, and only then I think this growth momentum can be sustained, because too much of income inequality or too much of a particular section of the population getting left behind may backfire this growth process, that we are seeing, because something which happened in Brazil during 1970s, we don't want that thing to happen in case of India. So with that, I would like to thank all of you for taking up your time and speak on this very important issue and participating in this post-budget discussion. If we don't have any question, Arjun, let's try to wrap this up. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir, we can go for closing remarks by all the panelists for 1-2 minutes.
Yes. So let's start with Pooja first, and we go backward.
Okay, so while I would maybe a closing remark, but yes, I would want to also understand, does the government have enough space? Does the government not have enough space? Okay, fair, agreed. But what about the land and labor reform? So while the government has mentioned that again a tripartite agreement, but don't you think high time we need to go back and move faster on a land and labor reforms, and then leave the forum with that? Because while I understand completely that it's a concurrent subject, land and labor reforms, but if we are able to implement the land and labor reforms, it will be an enabler for the industry, not a deterrent. So I will leave that as my closing remark. That's okay.
No, that's very good observation. In fact, there is something that we teach in our class is the hold-up problem. That's a particular thing which is kind of holding back the land reform. Maybe that will take a discussion by itself. But there is a rich literature related to the holding up problem. Shubham, any quick thought as a closing remark? Shubham, are you there?
Yeah.
Yeah, quick.
It is
your
it is for me.
Yeah, if Rajesh, if Shubhama is not there, please give us your concluding remark, please.
Yeah, just two things actually. The first thing is the which is I believe is very important in terms of when we are talking about the Viksit Bharat, we have to always think about Bharat as one unit actually, and which is currently diversity in terms of development, inclusion, and the other things are very actually the you can say uh, different from one region to another region, north to south, or in terms of development. That is one. Second thing is, I believe to make ourselves very impactful to deliver this, we need very focus and the skill level to handle the Viksit Bharat in better way. And this skill level is not up to the youth which is coming. Skill level, those who are governing the country. Skill level means those who are governing the country at different level. They even need to be trained to handle the future India in the better way, because the future India, if it is developed Bharat, problem and opportunity will be different from the today.
Okay, thank you so much. Do we have Yuvika? Can you please give us your concluding remark, please?
Sure. I think I would just like to leave everybody with two thoughts on which we believe the budget did not or should have probably been a bit more eloquent and vocal. One is that while the finance minister has laid down a soft target for further fiscal consolidation in FY26 to 4.5%, but there remains the question, what after that? So we know that our fiscal deficit needs further consolidation. We are still way higher than where we were pre-pandemic. But I thought the time was perhaps right for the finance minister to address this question and lay out either a committee or some kind of a guideline process as to where they think what would be an optimal level of fiscal deficit, and when they intend to achieve that in the foreseeable timeline. And second, I think a topic that did find some mention in the budget and does come on and off in discussion, from the government, is on asset monetization. So while we understand that there is a pipeline of projects which the government can monetize, and they should monetize, and this was something that the chief economic advisor had also put out in the economic survey, that the government should be ready to let go. They have to let go their presence in a few sectors where those sectors are not of strategic importance, and they are probably better handled in the private sector. So how do we go forward with this asset monetization? Because we are ultimately resource constrained or revenue constrained, and how to utilize that money that we get from asset monetization to further the goal of Viksit Bharat. So these are 2 points that I would have loved had the government given a slightly longer term or a medium term plan about.
I think the FM was very clear, saying that one of the way they're going to generate money is through disinvestment. I think she has given some target. I'm not sure how much exact number about that, but disinvestment is one of the key area that she is going to focus on.
Yeah, but their track record has been fairly poor in the last few years. So,
Dr. Shobhata Bhattacharya, are you there? Yeah, I achieved that. Okay, Dr. SP, are you still there? If you can give us your concluding remark, please.
Yes, sir. Firstly, I would like to appreciate the connotations made by all the esteemed speakers, and our suggestions. Like I already mentioned that in the pre-budget memorandum, we had suggested the extension of PLI scheme to the more labor-intensive sectors like uh, with some more employment creating and employment oriented, the PLI scheme should be expanded to those sectors. That is still still underway. I think government will consider those suggestions in the coming times. And the suggestion related to the petroleum products under the ambit of GST is still in pipeline. I think they will consider it in the coming times. But we appreciate that the focus of the budget is at the grassroots level, and Gyan is the major focus area, major theme of the current budget. And we look forward that more and more reforms are coming for the growth and development of the country to move forward and to become Viksit Bharat by 2047.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you all for participating in this.
Saugata sir is also here. Yeah, please go.
Okay. Shakunada, please, your concluding remarks.
Nothing. I mean, everybody has covered the budget topics so comprehensively. So two things. One, on that fiscal consolidation path, remember this time, whatever resources they had is a very one-time resource. The dividend given by the RBI, this is not going to get replicated again. So this is very good. So, I mean, this is so one-time resources means a one-time expenditure. And that one-time expenditure was probably the reduction in the fiscal deficit. So this is something which is needed. So that's number one. Point two is that none of us, to the best of my whatever I heard, has talked about another remarkable transformation change in the budget, which is the attitude towards trade with China. So this is one thing which is very, very remarkable, that now they're actually, instead of now looking at China as a pariah, we are now looking to increase our trade, particularly some parts of Chinese trade, and looking to increase investment from China. So this is a change. Probably we need to see how things go on the government's focus on domestic led. Of course, the PLI scheme is also there. And third, I to the best of my ability, I didn't hear Atmanirbhar Bharat in this budget speech. This is something which is also a very big change in the budget. So how the government plays out in some of these changes that I talked about needs to be seen. Thank you.
No, that's a good observation. In fact, one of my friend was asking me yesterday that how come all the tariff on electronic items have been reduced, and is it because that we are again trying to shake our hand with Chinese counterpart, So good observation, and thank you all of you for being part of this discussion. And with that, I would like to conclude this session on Viksit Bharat and the Union Budget 2047. Once again, thank you all for your participation. Over to you, Arjun.
So, Samprikta, briefly a vote of thanks. Yeah.
As we come to the end of today's discussion, I, Samprikta Banerjee, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, would like to propose the formal vote of thanks. On behalf of IMPRI, Center for the Study of Finance and Economics, CSFE. I would like to thank all of you for attending today's deliberation, a panel discussion on Viksit Bharat, Developed India, ADRI 2047 and Union Budget 2024-25. As a part of IMPRI 5th annual series of thematic deliberations and analysis of Union Budget 2024-25. We are grateful to our chair for this session, Professor Nilanjan Banik, and to our esteemed panelists, Mr. Saugata Banerjee ji, Mr. Saugata Bhattacharya ji, Dr. S.P. Sharma ji, Ms. Yuvika Singhal ji, Dr. Rajesh Shukla ji, Mr. Shubhamoy Bhattacharya ji, and Professor Pooja Mishra ji. I also thank all of our participants who have raised pertinent questions and actively participated in today's deliberation. We are grateful if you are watching us later on our YouTube channel or listening to us on our various podcasts or reading our publications. We hope you continue to join in future to our IMPRI Web Policy Talk and Web Policy Learning. Wishing you a good day ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day. Bye.